You're listening to the Devil Dog Talk Show.
This show contains explicit material and is recommended for ages 18 and older for mature audiences only. But hey, it's the internet.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Devil Dog Talk Show. Today we have Dr. Michele Ross from 7 HOPE, and I do believe it's just 7 Hope Alliance. We got a lot of great things to discuss, so I'm going to turn it over to her for a little bit of an introduction. How are you doing today, Dr. Michele Ross?
Oh, I'm rocking out after that intro.
It's a
But
good one.
I'm fantastic. I'm actually here in Oklahoma City, but I'm moving to Dallas at the end of the month. So a little bit of a life transition. But I am so excited to tell you a little bit about my healing story and how I sort of merge being a patient with being a researcher and a lot of the nonprofit work I'm doing and some of the more urgent things that are happening. So I'll tell you a little bit of a funny story. First off, I thought it was funny that you're called like the Devil Doc Talk because actually I started on Big Brother 11 years ago, and I was famous for exiting this reality TV show with devil horns on my head. So I was like the Devil Doc.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was just like, does he even know? Oh my God, it's so funny.
I didn't. No, and I read through your bio, and I don't really do TV too much, but
Mhm.
when I saw Big Brother, I was like, isn't that the show?
Yeah,
So
it's a big summer show. A lot of Midwestern families, like it's like huge. Like in certain parts, like in the cities, people are like whatever, but
that's
it's
awesome.
big. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
no, that's awesome. And even that you were a part of a program like that and you walked out with devil horns and now you're on the Devil Doc Talk Show
Yeah.
today. And it's, and you're helping veterans too, because that's kind of what we were discussing just before we started.
Hmm.
That's where the name come from is Devil Docs, when we attach to Marines and we hang out with those guys and do what we do. To hear that you have a similar kind of what's the word, distancing or somebody putting horns on you, so to speak, that's
Yeah.
pretty on par.
Well, it's funny because it's actually I was bullied on this show, and people pinned a lot of things on me that weren't true, or was very controversial. And it's
Mm.
sort of funny because in the science world, I've worked with plant medicine for a long time, and I've always been like 5 or so years ahead of the mainstream. I've always been like, let's advocate for cannabis and have the first like big cannabis research nonprofit. And they're like, you can't do that. No, that's not allowed. And then, I pushed for a lot of advocacy. I actually helped legalize cannabis across the United States and a lot of places. But I also worked with legalizing mushrooms. And again, I'm actually my background is I'm actually an addiction neuroscientist. So I have a PhD in neuroscience. I used to study cocaine self-administration in rats and neural pathways and what were the factors that got people more likely to become addicted or be able to maintain sobriety if they so choose. So I came from a really hardcore like addiction world, and then I went sort of the opposite way. I went into, hey, let's explore what is traditionally thought as drugs and see how people are using drugs to get off of other drugs.
Hmm.
So it was sort of a big switch for me. But part of that was that I had moved to California, where, of course, cannabis and all these things were around. I grew up in the East Coast. So, I had a very strict family, and I was like, I'm going to save the world from drug addiction. And so that's how I got my PhD. And then went out to California, for more training. And I was like, oh, people are using drugs all over, and the world isn't ending. What
Hmm.
is this? And what are these different plant medicines? I actually my story is very messy, but in the midst of all this, when I moved to California, I ended up having some health issues. I had an arm that just like went numb. I had two nerves that just stopped working. So my
Oh my God.
radial and ulnar nerve, yeah, overnight I woke up and I was like, my hand was dropped, it was clawed up, it hurt really bad. And no one could figure out what was wrong with me at the time. Now I know what kind of different like rare illnesses I have, but no one really
Mhm.
knew what to do with me. It was funny. I was introduced to a cannabis topical and massage, and apparently it was, you know, not even eating it. It was actually putting it on where the nerves were being restricted. It was reducing inflammation, helping blood flow, and it helped actually my nerves sort of revive and not die. And so my hand started working, my arm started working, and it was just beautiful. And that's sort of how I got into cannabis. So I started with cannabis. I started learning about, mushrooms. Started learning about kratom too because I had even more health challenges. And it's been very beautiful to learn about these substances that are so let's just say, controversial, taboo. They're not things that are normally practiced in the medical offices. Now, cannabis is now a little bit more because there's medical programs, but think about it 10, 15 years ago, right? It was, you had a handful of doctors maybe recommending it. Maybe they were always in trouble with like their boards and things like that. They were worried about the DA taking away their licenses. When we have the veterans um, hospitals, they're not allowed to prescribe cannabis. They can only prescribe the THC synthetic version, Marinol. Like there's all these restrictions and hurdles and things like that happen on the way to legalizing it and being able to have safe access to these plant medicines. And so I was one of the first people that actually co-sponsored the bill in Denver to legalize psilocybin, so decriminalize it. It wasn't really legalized. It was basically, the first city in the whole United States. When I was living there, we had this group, and we're like, okay, we can do this. And I had been working, sort of behind the scenes to try to make this happen. It was one of those big things. People are like, no, we'll never see legal psilocybin, and it started there, and the grassroots effort just exploded across the United States. And so I've always been like the person that like sparks the fire. I'm like, you can do it. Come on, we can do this. And then I moved to another state, spark a little fire. I founded a lot of different little groups. In the background, I've always been working with patients, specifically with people with chronic pain. That's been my passion, to help them be able to understand how to use these properly, not get hurt, not become addicted, help people that might become addicted to some of these substances, and taper them down or help refer them to the right people. Now we have things like ibogaine retreats and things like that. They're just amazing. I'm not an MD or DO, so like I don't do some of the more would say medical activities, right? I work in harm reduction and sort of like health coaching in that way, but not necessarily like I can't treat an illness. So like, for example, if you're like, I have bipolar and I want to use this, I'm like, okay, calm down. Like you to the person that can actually work with you, like with psychedelic medicine, like an actual licensed therapist or something like that. But in terms of kratom, it's been very interesting because I actually had this big health ordeal where I ended up in a wheelchair. I had like a heart attack, lung collapse, blood clots. Like I almost died from pulmonary embolisms, like crazy. They called me the Christmas miracle. They did not think I was going to survive. Like I woke up and I was just like, I'm dead. Like I'm dying. I said goodbye to everyone. They're like, say goodbye to your family. You're not going to make it. It was Christmas. It was like 2014. Prayed and prayed. Woke up. Somehow made it through. But I was in rough shape. And I had cannabis edibles to help me a little bit with the pain. I was, in a wheelchair, then a walker. I had an oxygen tank on me for months. But somebody had said, because I had mentioned, even though I use cannabis, I'm a big advocate for it. I have this nonprofit for it. I didn't know at the time I had narcolepsy. No joke. So cannabis always makes me sleepy. It helps, but it would put me to sleep. And so as I started to recover, I wanted to be able to work, but still manage my pain. And so somebody had, I had a lot of followers from being on Big Brother and doing all these charity events and things like that. And they said, hey, why don't you try kratom? And I go, okay, I've never heard of this. Where do you get this from? This was like 2015. And so somebody sent me like a baggie of kratom and I tried it, and it was interesting because it gave me energy, but it also provided pain relief. And so that was the difference. And it's for somebody with narcolepsy, which is a disease where you have excessive daytime sleepiness, you fall asleep very easily. You're always tired. And then I have fibromyalgia now. I have all these other conditions. I'm like, I am sleepy as heck. But I need to work, right? I need to be a scientist. I can't be like, let me crunch numbers.
Exactly.
So kratom for me really was sort of this magical fit for me. I still use CBD and THC at night to go to sleep, but I use kratom during the day, and it really does work for me. And it's very interesting because there's been a development of these kratom products, and we'll just go back to like, what is kratom first of all?
Right.
Talking about this, people are like, I've probably heard of weed, I've heard of mushrooms. What the heck is this kratom plant?
Exactly.
Yeah. So the kratom plant is grown in Southeast Asia. So it's really hard to grow in the United States. It's not very tropical. There's a couple places in Florida and like San Diego that can grow it a little bit, but it doesn't express as much of the active ingredient because it's not in its natural environment. It's like if you try to grow cannabis in places where it's not supposed to grow, you're going to get really weak. Weak weed. Let's just say that. So you don't want the weak kratom, right? And that's, by the way, like the government is actually growing kratom trees in Florida, and it produces really weak kratom. Let's just say that.
Wow. And I bet that's what they're basing all their studies or whatever on.
Yes. Yeah, they actually have studies too where like they'll take kratom that doesn't have any 7-OH in it, and that's one of the alkaloids that's in it. And it's like in all the products, we're not talking about 7-OH like just the product itself, but regular kratom powder has 7-OH in it. And they're like, we did all these studies with these powders that surprisingly had no 7-OH in it. And you're like, these studies are a little weird, man. This isn't what people are taking. If you test what this guy's taking, what this guy's taking, it's got a little bit in it, not a lot, but so basically, the kratom plant is really cool, and it's been very exciting for me to study because it's very similar to cannabis in the fact that it has all these different botanical ingredients that do things when they're separated. They do things or sort of like the entourage effect in cannabis, where it's like, well, we have 50 alkaloids or 50 active chemicals in this kratom plant. The majority of the alkaloids are metrogeny. That makes up about 66% of the alkaloids in kratom. Again, those are those active ingredients that the plant is just making. And for us, what happens when you take this kratom plant, which is a leaf that you can, eat the leaf, chew it. That's how it's used historically. You can grind up the leaf, put it in capsules, or you can take it as a tea. That's also traditional use of it. You can also extract certain things out of this kratom leaf, like a metrogeny tablet. Or people are making 7-OH tablets, which is you take the metrogeny and you just oxidize it. You change it just with a little bit of a chemical change, and you turn it into 7-OH, which is an alkaloid that is found in that kratom plant, but so little of it. It also has all these other alkaloids. It's very interesting. It's like panthenine, it's like speciogynin. It's like a lot of really hard to say for the average Joe terms, but it's like those cannabinoids where you're like, okay, can we just say it by the abbreviations? Like this is a mouthful. It's like THCV and CBN. The same thing with the kratom plant. It's got all these alkaloids. We're just starting to learn about like what they do in the body, what they do together. But the main part is I want people to know when they look at a kratom product in the store, right? Or you go to the gas station or you go to a kratom store, wherever you might find a kratom or 7-OH products, that these do contain opioids. And sometimes, like, it's been interesting because even the Kratom Association, for years was like, oh, it's an opioid-like substance. It's not really an opioid. It's a wellness product. It's like caffeine. The kratom plant is related to the coffee plant, but it is not coffee. Let's just say that, right? Coffee will wake you up, right? But it doesn't activate opioid receptors. The kratom plant, the two major opioids in there are metrogeny and 7-hydroxymetrogeny. And so they're opioids, but they're different from other opioids, like different from oxycodone or different from fentanyl or different from morphine. And here's how they're different. One is that their chemical structure is a little bit different. They're not opiates. So like an opiate is something like morphine or heroin. It's something that's derived from the opium poppy. So first off,
and that can be confusing. Yeah.
Yes. It's like there's a lot of words here that like people have to navigate and learn, but it's just like, again, people didn't know the difference between THC and CBD. Like, oh, they're the same, right? You're like, I'm getting high on CBD. No, you're not. But then there was like THCA weed, and like there was all these confusing terms, and people were like, I thought I was getting this, I got high, or they wanted to get high and they didn't. And there was like a lot of confusion about stuff. So the same things are sort of happening with kratom. And so again, I really stress that a regular healthy person who's just like trying to like relax or something, maybe take a different botanical, because again, whenever you're dealing with something that is an opioid, even if it's slightly different than other opioids out there, it can be addictive. There can be harms to it. And so I always stress, like, if you want to get into kratom, like, don't get into it because like, oh, I just want to replace my coffee. Like, that's seems like not the best swap, guys.
Yeah.
If you have severe pain like fibromyalgia or severe migraines and you've tried every medication and nothing works and this works for you, be mindful about it. And if it's something that you have to take every day, know what you're taking, know how much you're taking, be aware if you're escalating your dose or if you need to take a tolerance break. It's the same sort of things with cannabis where you're like, wow, I did not realize I was spending that much on weed every month. Now these people are like, oh, I was taking kratom and now I'm taking like 20 grams of kratom powder. I'm like, you're taking handfuls and handfuls of kratom powder every day. Like, that's not healthy or good for your body. Like,
Not at all.
There's people that get liver toxicity and seizures and things like that. And so I have to stress, because it's natural does not mean it's safe.
Exactly.
Does not mean it's does not mean that there are risks associated with it. Caffeine is natural. You drink too much caffeine, you die from
You
all
have a heart
heart
attack.
attacks.
Exactly.
So it's mind-boggling sometimes where I see these reports where somebody's like, "Well, I had this kratom drink, right?" So they'll like even sell right now, just like cannabis, right? So cannabis, you can get. This is not a cannabis drink, by the way. This is just a regular caffeine drink. But for visual sake, right? They now put THC extracts, even from hemp or from cannabis, right, into the drinks, right? You can just
Mhm.
drink your weed and you could get high as you want, if you drink like four of them or something, or if you're lightweight like me, one. But in the same way, there's kratom drinks now, and so
Mhm.
people are drinking these kratom seltzers, and not realizing, hey, you could go to a party. There's an alcohol seltzer, there's a THC seltzer, and there's a kratom seltzer. You've never tried kratom before. Let's drink alcohol and kratom and drink them all together. And you see a lot of issues right now with people don't know what these products are and what
Yeah.
they do, and they think, oh, it's just another way to get high or something. But an opioid mixed with alcohol, an opioid is sedative, just so you know.
Mhm.
So it can make you sleepy, it can relieve pain, but it is not safe to take with a lot of things, right? If you look on an oxycodone bottle, it'll tell you like, a long list of things. Don't drink with this, don't take other benzodiazepines like Xanax with this, don't take in
CNS
antihistamine.
depressants, yeah.
Yeah. Don't take any of Benadryl, for example. I can't even tell you how many overdoses or like issues where it was like alcohol, kratom, and Benadryl. And
Oh
so
my
there's
god.
like some basic things that I feel have been lacking from the industry, from people who be like, this is a wellness product, it helps. And I do believe that these things help, but you have to have the realities like people on our SSRIs or people take sleeping pills. They just don't think that, oh, I have the kratom in my system. Kratom is fat loving, just like THC. And by fat loving, that means it's lipophilic. And
Mm.
that term means, hey, some of that active ingredients in the kratom or in the cannabis, like THC, will stick in your fat cells. And so, even after you stop taking kratom or after you stop taking cannabis, these substances are still in your fat and they'll release over time and things like that. And so people don't even realize, like, oh, I went and took 10 drinks, but you had opioids in your system, even though it's been a little bit. So you have to be mindful whenever you're using substances, and especially if you're like sort of a lifelong user of
Mhm.
substances. There's a lot of people that have taken kratom for 10, 15 years, right? And it's part of their lifestyle, and they feel comfortable, like, oh, I'll go drinking or I'll go do this and that. And you have to always be mindful of what you're taking. You're on when you use kratom, you're on opioids. Now, I want to stress that metrogene and 7-hydroxymetrogene or 7-OH, they act differently at the opioid receptor. So technically, they are safer than other opioids. They're called partial mu opioid agonists. And what that means is that basically, if you have like a light bulb, you have two light bulbs here, um, and you're trying to turn on the dimmer, right? So metrogenine is this like you're trying to turn on this light bulb, and the dimmer just goes like halfway, quarter way. So you're like, okay, it sort of didn't, light up the whole light bulb. You
Mhm.
have fentanyl or morphine, and you've got the dimmer, and it goes all the way up, and you're like, boom, bright light bulb.
To
Now,
11. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And so what the difference is here is that uh, these opioids are binding in the receptors, but they're not able to turn them on fully. And so you don't
Mm.
get the full euphoria. You don't get the full risks like respiratory depression, overdose, and death. It takes a lot of this stuff to actually cross over that threshold. Whereas with a full opioid agonist, it's binding and it's turning on all those pathways fully. So you get all the full effects. And that's why you can take more and more and more and feel great. And then all of a sudden you're dead.
Jesus Christ.
And I hate to say that, but that's the difference. And so what you see in the media right now, you see these things as like they're dangerous. They're just like the regular opioids. They'll kill you. And technically they can kill you
Mhm.
if you take other respiratory depressions like alcohol. And like in the news, there's been these stories, or not stories, I'm sorry. These are actually people that have died of polydrug use, but they've had kratom and or 7-OH products plus alcohol plus a whole bunch of other respiratory depressants. And so I want to stress, you want to use these substances, use them safely, understand what you're taking, look at the milligrams, look at, is this a kratom product? Is this a kratom extract? Is this a metrogene extract? Is this a 7-OH extract? We'll talk about that. What I do with the Seven Hope Alliance is actually educate people on what this new category of products is. The 7-OH products are like pretty much 100% 7-OH. It's just like one alkaloid, similar to like the cannabis industry made gummies that just have THC in them, or just have CBN, or just have THCV. We have
Mhm.
this one ingredient here that's a little bit stronger. The 7-OH does activate the receptor a little bit more stronger than the regular metrogene. Again, these two active ingredients are already in the plant. And very interesting sort of like science thing here is that the metrogene that's in the kratom plant actually gets metabolized into a whole bunch of different compounds, but actually about we're not exactly 100% sure. It's like between 10 and 24% of it gets metabolized into the 7-OH. So not only is it in the product, but it's also, if you're a kratom user, you already have the 7-OH. And the science shows that the 7-OH is really what people are taking this product for, because it's more likely to cause the pain relief, to cause some of those positive symptoms, not symptoms, but like symptom relief that they're looking for, whether it's anxiety, depression, pain, all those different things. It's
Yeah.
really coming from the 7-OH. So that's sort of interesting. So it's like we're sort of cutting out the middleman. We're like, okay, do you want to eat 10 grams of powder that like tastes nasty and bitter? If if you've ever seen green matcha, like that tastes sort of bitter. This is like kratom powder itself is like 20 times more bitter. Like it's gross.
It's not the
Like
best.
people, no, like you put
It's
in orange juice and you're like, why am I doing this? It looks ugly. It looks like brown sludge. Like people put it in like these little like crystal bag, not crystal, sorry, clear bags, right? It's like
Mm.
toss and wash, or like tossing in like this weird little natural bag of powder in your mouth to try to get your medication. And it's like, that's a lot. And for some people, especially people that have like gastrointestinal problems, or, they brought it out their stomach because they've taken NSAIDs and taken all these meds. Like I take gabapentin and I'm like, I
Mm.
can tell you my stomach is not a happy person after 2 years on that. Right. And so I take that for nerve pain. And, my stomach it was hard to take the powder. And it was interesting when 7-OH came out, it came out in late 2023. So not a lot of markets had it. Like people didn't know what it was. And then all of a sudden 2024 sort of like was like the exponential graph of like all of a sudden all the gas stations and smoke shops and everything started carrying this because people started trying it and they go, oh, so instead of taking 10 grams of powder, I just have to take a little tablet and I
Mhm.
get the same effect. Wow, that seems way more convenient. I'm not like, holding this big tumbler full of powder, or like, have this like blink wraps like powder thing. Like it's just like it's the way that kratom works is very inconvenient. Again, like
Yes.
sodas and stuff like that can be convenient, but it's also expensive and it's like,
And then that's where,
it's a lot.
overdose and miscommunication on how much and everything, and that's the reason why I think, the powder form's a great deterrent. It's a natural deterrent, okay?
Hmm.
It's not like
Yes.
smoking a joint. That tastes icky.
Yeah, so it does actually, help. I would say some limiting, some limit on addiction. Although I will say that from the literature, there's been a lot of work, especially from John Hopkins, showing that about 30% of people that use kratom are dependent on it and may have, even qualify for kratom use disorder. Now, I've always had an issue with sometimes how we label different disorders or things like that, because it's like cannabis use disorder, are they patients or are they actually
Misusing it,
addiction?
yeah.
Yeah. And so
What's the
we don't,
context?
yeah,
Yeah,
we don't label people who use antidepressants as like, you have your antidepressant use disorder, you must take this antidepressant every day, and if you try to get off your Cymbalta or something, you have
yeah,
terrible withdrawals and you don't want to do it, and you're like, sorry doc, I'm not going to do it, we're going to stay on this. Like we don't
exactly.
call them that they have an addiction or that they're dependent, but clearly people are dependent on pain relief, on antidepressants, on anxiety medicines. And so our context of how we call it, who's addicted to different substances is really not the legality of these things. Is it a prescription? They're not dependent, they're not addicted, if the
Mhm.
doctor's managing it. But we tend to say things that are federally illegal or federally gray, like kratom is right now. It's not scheduled, but it's not necessarily got anyone's blessing. Um, it's in those gray areas, and so they tend to be like, well, if it's not a prescription, then you're abusing it. You're self-treating for your illness. But I have to say, there's a reason why people are going towards plant medicines, whether it's kratom, whether it's cannabis, whether it's psilocybin. All these substances reduce pain and inflammation in different ways. And, there's different reasons why one might use one versus the other. We all sort of like have our own little quirks, whether it's our
We're all
gut, whether it's our
unique.
brain. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
very unique. And so, there's people that use all three. There's people that use canna. There's people that I believe in medical freedom and bodily autonomy. I believe that if it comes from the earth, we should be able to harness that and be able to use that for ourselves. And especially if we're not hurting anyone, right? But our
Exactly.
government is not really, this
They're
is
not
not
to
really
speed.
like that. Let's just
Yeah.
say they don't really honor bodily autonomy right now. But why do people go to Kratom and why do people go to 7OH? Um, right now, we're having a sort of a very big pushback against pain management. A lot of people have been forced tapered off of opioids, and so these are people who had legitimate medical problems. Like, for example, I know fibromyalgia patients that move from one state to another, and their new doctor is like, "Oh, fibromyalgia is not real. We're going to get you off your pain meds." You're like, "What?" So we have patients that are going, "Okay, my doctor doesn't think my disease is real. It's
Yeah.
real, and I've had it for like 25 years, and I'm disabled by it, but he told me to take Tylenol." And so now you have people like,
Tylenol.
oh, yes, how am I supposed to take care of my family and work on like I have level 10 pain, but here's a Tylenol, right? It's
See, and
like,
that's something very powerful that you bring up is that level of 10. Whose level of 10? Right?
mhm,
When we're talking about pain management and like chronic conditions, whose level is important because
mhm,
subjective and objectively, if I'm projecting in a health room, right, and I'm a provider, my qualifications need to be revoked. That's the simplest things. Why would I walk into a room and be like, "Oh, this person's presenting well, they don't need whatever it is that they're
mhm,
seeking." They get labeled and then they get
mhm,
red flagged, and that's the horror stories that so many people live.
mhm.
That is one of the most passionate subjects that I have going on personally with my life. I am
Yeah.
that guy that was titrated off
I'm
forcibly by
sorry.
it was
Yeah.
sucks, right?
Yeah.
They were just sending me letters saying, "Hey, you're gonna wake up dead, homie." And we were like, "All right, well, let's titrate down, but not off." And then they just transferred me 4 doctors. And then the 4th doctor was like, "I don't even know this guy. I'm not redoing nothing." Right? So the worst part about that cycle that you're talking about is that you seek something that works and then you get labeled a drug seeker.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like, well, hey, I am the mentally retarded guy. I'm not gonna lie. I'm labeled, everything's analyzed, all the tests. That sounds stupid. Okay? Like, it sounds really ridiculous that we're gonna remove any sense of, like you said, autonomy, self
Mhm.
assertion, self relief, because aren't we a nation of individuals and our independence and freedom of liberties and the pursuits of happiness, right? Isn't medical one of those things? I'm not saying it's a right, but it's one of those things that if you are looking at, I want to say the ass end of a diagnosis, and now your doctors are saying, "Hey, this isn't even real." How can we do that to people? Medical
Mhm.
gaslighting is a huge issue right now. And
Absolutely. And patient
yeah,
suicide, this is real. People
yes,
are killing themselves every single day because they don't know what to do. If you're in so much pain that you can't function, you can't work, now you're going to go into a cardboard box with your kids because you have nowhere to live because you couldn't work, right? This is
exactly.
what's actually happening. They are actually killing people and they have no remorse about it, right? If you told them, "I'm in so much pain, I can't work, I want to die," you're going to be 5150 or like put into a mental ward being like, "Oh, she wants to kill herself." It's like
Yeah.
the answer was pain management, right? And so I'm actually very, very worried about some of the policies. I care about veterans very deeply too, especially because my work in the past with PTSD and veterans. But saying here, we did a survey actually at the Seven Hope Alliance. We had about 1,521 people fill out this survey in October, and 8% of the respondents were veterans. So 8% of our people were using 7.0. And a lot of them gave us comments and feedback. It was like, "Well, the VA cut me off and I'm in pain and I will kill myself if I no longer have access to the one thing that I'm allowed to take that will help my severe pain." A lot of them said, "Hey, Kratom worked, but I had to use so much. It was just too much, on my system. This works for me. I'm responsibly using it. Why would you take this away from me?" And right now, it's just crazy that we have the opioid policies where the VA wants to be like the first no opioid center. I don't know if you've seen that, like some of the stuff out there. And I'm like, really?
Their
No opioids for everyone.
propaganda,
It's insane.
it's
Yeah.
just constant propaganda from that organization. When you receive 450 some odd billion dollars every year, now this next year, and your projected growth year over year is 10 to 12% without even getting near the outcomes you're supposed to.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that system isn't designed to do what it says it's saying it does.
Yeah.
Like,
And I mean, I'm very worried that we're going to see even more veterans, completely weaned off inappropriately and, seek illicit opioids or seek other things, and especially in states that have already banned 7-OH. So there was a lot of media attention to 7-OH. Like people that needed it for pain sort of knew where to get it, but like the
mhm,
whole United States found out about 7-OH when the White House basically did a press conference at the end of July, and it was RFK Jr. And the FDA head and a whole bunch of other people made this big press conference that 7-OH was dangerous, that all the kids were going to get into these vape shops and buy all the 7-OH, and we have to ban it. We have to make it a Schedule 1 drug because it'll be the fourth wave of the opioid epidemic. And all of a sudden, every single state was like, "What?" And then also, some people are getting phone calls from from the feds, which was interesting because these are states, right? Like states are supposed to have like sort of independence, but the feds are
mhm.
like, you need to ban the 7-0 right now. And it was sort of interesting because there was no crisis. No one was dying from
Exactly.
this. No teens were buying this. Most of these smoke shops are already 21 plus. So they're not like, hey, 16-year-old, have some drugs. Like, and again, 7-OH isn't really a drug. There are some people that use it, misuse it. There are people that do use it for recreational use, but our survey, and we've done this now twice, it keeps coming up with the same number. About 74% of people use this for chronic pain. We have, about 22% use it for opioid dependence so that they don't have to go back on illicit or prescription opioids that they no longer, have access to, right?
It's not even you don't have access to, you can't even have the conversation with your provider or
Yep.
else you will be labeled.
Yeah.
So it's even like a scarier world nowadays. Like I was on morphine for about 4.5 years, and it was the only thing that moderately managed. I was on gabapentin, like through
Hmm.
when I transferred from El Centro to NMCSD on hardship, and I was supposed to get retired and all that stuff, right? That didn't happen because all the drugs they put me on, I just needed to not kill myself or others.
Hmm.
Damn near threw a little Filipina chief off a bridge. Really, really close. That dude, he was like so scared. And I was like, damn, I'm scared of myself too, dog. Like shit.
Hmm.
Right. But this is the medicines, quote unquote, you're allowed to take. Right.
Hmm.
And after years and years, and it's amazing that you brought up 2015, because 2015, I ended up in Denver
Hmm.
for the Cannabis Cup, and I met the Super Troopers, Dr. Sue
Ah,
Sisley, Roger Martin when he was still
hmm.
around for the cannabis and stuff. And
Yeah.
it was just an amazing, like to me, it was like a renaissance, a revolution of green where you could see,
Hmm.
dude, the potential. I met billionaires and investors and
Yeah.
PE
It was
firms
so
and
exciting.
dude, right? And then now we're talking about kratom in a way where people, I get it. The administration wants to be preemptive or proactive in that, you said it, the fourth wave of opiate issues, right? But when we're not actually cutting the market off from what we need, because it's not, oh, everybody's overdosing on 7-OH or kratom or even cannabis or mushrooms, and actually, there's frog juice, there's all these, nobody's
Yeah.
touching that. Okay, nobody, it's fentanyl. Okay, it's fentanyl, it's meth. It's why, wait,
Hmm.
why would be fentanyl the biggest? Oh, because we don't have any safe access to
Yeah.
even conversations. And if we don't want to communicate what 7-OH is or kratom is and how to manage it, we still need the five rights in medicine, right? The right time, right patient, right dose,
Hmm.
right route, right everything. There's another right. I think I got 3 out of 5. I'm good. What
Yes.
I could say is there's a lot more we could be doing as a society. So I really got to ask you about kratom on, the 7-OH side of the house, because it is hard to access. I've been a patient of trying to find something now for 15 years. When I found the kratom powder, it was, like I said, excruciatingly inconvenient. It isn't a
Hmm.
deterrent, but now I do it like the ceremony that I also do my cannabis, because to me, the ritual of medicine needs
Yeah.
to be fully enveloped. And it's not just the journey that you take with the medicine, it's how am I integrating what I'm getting out of this experience. And that's everything every day. If it's a meal, if it's water, what am I doing with this water? I'm trying to survive. Yes, but why am I trying to survive? Because that pain that you're talking about, the one where you're like, fuck this, I'm going to kill myself, right? That's me every day for the past 15 years. But when I found kratom, it was like, oh, now, hey, wait. This is more effective than the morphine in a weird way, but it's not as strong. And that's a very big
Hmm.
difference, just like
Yeah, it's
cannabis.
not as
Cannabis.
psychoactive. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's not as like, hey, we're like you said, it doesn't go to 11. This is like a 3. Cool, but a 3 brings my 10 and 9 to a 7 or 8 even during a flare
Manageable.
up. Exactly. Well, it's our manageable, okay?
Yeah.
Like if this was a regular person, they'd be
Yeah,
like
they would
7 or
still be
8.
like,
Gee
yeah.
whiz. Oh my
Uh,
god.
I
Yeah.
love the fact though that you brought up that like conscious use of medicines. And so I am actually a trained a psychedelic facilitator. And even before that, I always had this concept of conscious kratom use and even the kratom ritual. Uh, when you have matcha tea, there's a tea ceremony. I always said we need a kratom tea ceremony because there is that sometimes escalation of use where people will keep taking in, taking in, taking in more. They're just tossing it into their mouth and washing it down. It's like when you're taking it as a pain patient or you're taking it as somebody who's struggling with anxiety or depression, I always think of like, yes, it's like thank the medicine before you take it. And it actually really does sort of increase the healing response of it. And even if I take a tablet, whether it's my pharmaceutical, whether it's 7O something, I always thank the universe for that and for the healing of that. And I find that it really does help in minimizing, the escalation, because people
Mhm.
provide tolerance, but it's like when you have this like relationship with your medicine and you thank it for healing you, you tend to not abuse it as much because again, you're honoring it and you're thanking, oh, the universe for it. So it's like I love that point where it's like a lot of people don't have that concept. They're just like, okay, it's something I have to do. And it's just like, everything has an energy in it. So if you want to take that energy inside you and use it for good or use it for bad, it's just like you want more side effects from it. It's just like it really how you view your medicine, in whatever form it is, really does have an impact on how your body receives it. So I just always
Completely
wanted to be
agree.
like sacred. It's like if people don't see like it's a pharmaceutical being sacred. Yes, it's a bunch of fillers and chemicals, but it is still healing you in some way. And again, I would prefer if everything was plant medicine, but again, not plant medicine doesn't always mean safe either. So everyone has a different balance of like what works with them, what's safe, etc. Again, I urge everyone to talk with a professional that knows it's like, is the things you're taking safe with us? But again, it's like that sacred understanding of what is healing your body is so important. Like I shouldn't be here, to be honest. I should be dead. I've had so many medical emergencies, it's ridiculous. And
Mhm.
for me to be able to work full time, travel the world, be able to educate people, I had a stroke a couple of years ago. It's like I was
Jesus.
literally lying in a bed and thinking like, this is it. Like somebody's gonna have to take care of me.
Yeah.
And being a neuroscientist, it was terrible, right? And here I am. I'm able to harness these different medicines to be up, to be walking, and no matter what, having a variable disability, right? Some days I'm great, and some other days I'm like, I lost all muscle function, like whoopsie, like we got to ride this one out until it works again. But because I do have MS symptoms, I've been still waiting for a diagnosis. That's why part of the reason why I'm moving out of Oklahoma is like the doctors here are so bad.
Yeah.
It's like 50 out of 50. I was like, I can't with you
Oh,
guys. Like, they'll be like,
that's
you
so
need to
sad to hear.
pray more, you can walk. I'm like, no, I'm out here.
It's like,
But
hey, I pray all the time, okay? And
uh,
what I can tell you is, look, hey, sometimes you gotta do your job, all right, Chuck?
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the truth of the matter. Like, I love it when doctors or administrators or politicians
Hmm.
say, "Keep the hope," "Don't give up hope, have faith." And I'm like, "Hey, motherfucker, we don't pay hundreds of trillions of billions of trillions of dollars to your ass for hope and wishes, okay?
Hmm.
Hardcore Christian, deeply faithful. I also don't agree with that. Hey, leveraging something that somebody might not fit. It might not be what they seek, and they may not feel adequate, and just to deflect and disregard somebody and go like, dude, and you have to move a state now. It's like,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, we've
it's
seen
sad.
this before. When I was in Denver, right? We had all the cannabis refugees that were basically dismissed by their doctors, and they had their kids with epilepsy, and they had to go to
Hmm.
Colorado to be able to access the cannabis medicine. So one of the other reasons why I'm moving to Dallas on November 1st, basically laws that ban 7-OH. Before it was banned at a 2% level, but now it's banned at 1%. And so it's like one of the most strictest laws in the country, besides Florida right now with like their temporary ban. But being somebody who is very, active and the face of this organization, I'm not the executive director, Jackie Subbick is, but I'm out there, debunking the science, talking, like, hey, RFK, you need to pull back from this ban and from scheduling the substance. And then that makes me a target. I know from my cannabis activism days that I had friends in Oklahoma that were targeted, before cannabis became medically legal in Oklahoma. I was like,
Hmm.
this is not a friendly state. I'm going to get out of here before I wake up with like the cops at my house.
Oh yeah.
You have to be careful. And I know it's hard because activism needs courage, right? You need to have these conversations that people are like, oh my goodness, you're the devil for having them. Like, for example, me telling people to take 7-OH, there'll still be 8 messages a day being like, oh, my son got addicted, or you need to go to prison, or things like that. And it's like, well, there's always going to be people who abuse things, but there's also going to be like millions of people right now. Like we estimate there's about 1.5 to 2 million people who are using 7-OH right now. That's a lot of people. There's
Hmm.
20 million total people in Kratom, and that includes the 7-OH people because most of them also use Kratom, right? So 20 million Kratom users out there, right? Everyone has an opinion about this, but guess what? People have been using this safely for years, right? And if I have to be the person that falls on the sword so somebody else doesn't die because they have a medicine that they can use,
Hmm.
I'm okay with that, And it's funny, it's like I went from being bullied in high school, bullied on a reality TV show, to now I'm like, you can't hurt me. And
Yeah.
I'm going to stand up for everyone who doesn't have a voice, because the people in severe chronic pain, the people who are on level 10, like despite even getting any of their medications, right? Like the suicide level pain people, they don't have anyone fighting for them. They don't have the strength to fight for themselves. And for somebody who's been in those places and walked in their shoes and been hopeless or been told, hey, you need to acknowledge your disability, just take a check and just give up on life and like sit in
Hmm.
your bed all day. I'm like, no, I want you to have a good life. You deserve a quality of life. God put you on this planet. Let's, use use your life, use your brain, use your heart, use your passion, find your purpose is not being in pain 24/7 and being miserable. And it's just weird to be, I'm always the bad guy, right? It's always the bad guy, but I'm like, I have science on my side. I'm never the person that would be like, hey, I'm going to advocate for something that's going to hurt people. I've
Hmm.
always aligned with what I know is true, right? And I know that prohibition doesn't work, right? Even if, people think, oh, well, we don't want people to be on drugs. We don't want people to be on heroin. How dare you give people needles and things like that? You know what? Your choices, if somebody is not hurting somebody else and is working for them, let's do that. Because guess what? If you ban a substance like 7-OH, which happened in Florida when they did an emergency ban, right after that press conference, what happened is people did look for heroin. People did kill themselves. And there's been bans on growth kratom and 7-OH in Louisiana. People killed themselves because they couldn't access any more medicine, right? Tapered off, basically forgotten by the medical system. And we're seeing that over and over again. Even our survey said that people are considering suicide. And that's the last thing I want to see. Again, so many veterans, answering our surveys. We have people with amputees and things like that. And you're like, they're going to take away their medicine?
Hmm.
You have any morals? Do you
No,
have
they
any
don't.
heart? And
They
it's
they take their
heartbreaking.
benefits. They take the I know guys that are triple amputees, and because they have prosthetics, the VA is trying to reduce their rating because now they don't need any help
Oh,
because
they're
they have a
less
prosthetic.
disabled.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
yeah.
it's the vocabulary that even the VA and the secretary and everybody that's advocating, quote unquote, for veterans, it's not in the shape or best form or interest or
Mm-mm.
outcomes for the veterans. It's
No.
something different, and that's where these conversations are so powerful, because knowing the statistics, almost becoming a statistic this year multiple times, right?
Mhm.
Simply because of the system's absolute refusal, Even though, see, this is specifically for the VA, because I'd love to talk shit about the medical system as a whole, but I'm not the professional in that. I'm pretty damn good with the VA. Okay. And in it, the CFR code is completely constructed in favor for the veteran. When you were to, if you were to take that in just a basic LLM and reduce the human involvement of administrative policy interpretation, right? You would find a huge shift in outcomes for veterans. Okay, if you were to look at the current statistics, right, the ratings and evaluations and what is a claim, and that's everybody discusses it. But what happens when you finally get a doctor, and now you have to go to the VA for care? Is care, right? There is no such thing. So even
Mhm.
for PTSD, people go to the VA for your PTSD treatment. They only offer, I think it's 12 to 14 weeks worth of CPT, CBT, or whatever
Yep.
data, whatever they want to say, empirical thing they can prove. That has nothing to do with anything. It has everything to do with their research programs that are
Mhm.
incubated and in what's the word, insidiously intertwined with the entire apparatus that is the VA. Okay, if
Mhm.
you go to the VA San Diego, it is romantically involved with UC San Diego to the point where we used to be able to park and then hobble ourselves into the first foyer and then go to our appointment. No, now we have to go to a huge parking structure. It's like a quarter mile away from the
Uh-huh.
entrance. And all of this stuff is because so students and whomever for UCSD can park right up there up front. And I go, they throw hundreds of billions of dollars at the VA. Yet when we discuss things like doctors with yourself, you know, the 70H, the kratom, uh, the other modalities of natural healing, right, cannabis included,
Mhm.
nobody's actually pioneering any kind of conversation for us at a administrative level because it's not lucrative, right?
Mhm.
And I go back to this: if benefits were to be mandated as much as the entrance, like MEPS, I don't know if you're familiar with the military, but when you join the military, you have to go through an evaluation process, a
Mhm.
testing, and one of the processes is MEPS, and you literally have to bend over and spread your cheeks, and the dude's got to look up in you and go,
Yeah.
hmm. Okay, open your mouth. Oh, I can see my light through there. Look at that. And it's one of those things where they very, very much look at everything. So why not that when you're exiting? Because it's not beneficial to the system. They would have to be responsible. And what I call it is liable. The current
Mhm.
systems in totality, excruciatingly much so the Veterans Affairs, they do not practice medicine. They practice policy. Okay. They don't care about outcomes. They care about statistics and ratios and what we make it look like. Because 22 a day isn't valid. That's not true. 6,400 a year is not valid. Because what are we identifying as suicide? What are we identifying as root
Mhm.
causation? And who's going to
Mhm.
publicly acknowledge certain things? Because we have to talk about things in a familiar way in a society. People don't want to discuss suicide because, much like living in chronic pain, nobody wants to think about that. They don't want to think about themselves in that
Yep.
situation because they can't tolerate that. They're so weak. Their bubble is so weak and precious, right? That if you pop it, they freak out. They freak the
Mhm.
fuck out. Okay. I've had so many conversations with VA doctors where they snap at me going, well, I'm not gonna lie to disrespect. I said, I don't trust you to hold a fart. So I don't understand. What did I call anybody a name? I just said you're not trustworthy. Is that the name? And
Mhm.
it's valid
Yeah.
when you have a complete apparatus, and I call it a system because the human beings behind it, I don't think they're evil. I just think they're very misguided. And when they're misguided, that's the same thing like the wars that we've been fighting, the medicines we've been applying. It goes down the throats of those who submit, and then nobody cares what the actual outcomes are because we're going to clap when the national anthem comes on. We're going to pray to say save our veterans and on Veterans Day and get those discounts, and then Memorial Day the same thing. But when it comes to actually, like you said, you get bullied in school, you got bullied on the show, you got bullied in science, now you're getting bullied politically. Well, fuck them, because hey, I'm the devil doc. All right, dude. That's what I love. I love when people like bullying shit because I'm that guy that likes to throat fuck motherfuckers and throw them against the wall and just rip them apart because I don't jive with that with patient care. Okay. That's what a devil doc is. This is why the Marines and everybody loves the corpsman, because when you get between him or her and that patient, you just sealed your own fate, homie. right? And that's exactly what the VA has done. That's exactly what the current administration has done. They're putting themselves in between the success of veterans. And I'm not just saying you yourself, right? A
Mhm.
doctor, a scientist, a neuroscientist, a researcher, and somebody that comes with not just experience, but receipts, right? They're not even kind of entertaining this as an answer.
Mhm.
That's where we need to stand up. And that's why, I mean, when I say, hey, just throw somebody to the ground a couple of times and watch them change their whole demeanor. Okay. Like, I get it. That's not what the world's used to. Okay. They're not used to somebody standing up and punching back. They're not used to people standing up and saying, what bear? I'm going to poke the shit out of that little bitch all day long, because they are killing 6,400 of us veterans a year. That's minimum. Right.
Mhm.
And to have a doctor like yourself come on the show today, share what you're sharing and having that experience. Now that's something where I go, man, we got to support you. How do we get in touch? How do we support you? And how do we learn more about these different modalities of healing?
Sure. So I work at Seven Hope Alliance, and we have a website called sevenhopealliance.org. You can reach it whether you write the seven out as a number or the seven. We have it both ways.
Okay.
But right now, because 7.0 is being banned like all over, like we're fighting in California, we're trying to reverse the ban in Florida. And by the way, the activities of the kratom industry are actually causing by accident, like they're trying to lobby against us, even though all kratom users have 7.0 in their system. So they're trying to lobby against and ban just the 7.0 products, saying that they're dangerous, but kratom isn't. So what's happening is that kratom and 7.0 are being banned everywhere instead. Like it's backfiring out. So we have an organization, sort of that's by a lobbying group and by our nonprofit that is, we work for education and research. We're not really lobbying. So we have like a
Mhm.
joint venture called save7oh.org. And so that's where you can sign petitions. We have over like 23 signers of a petition saying, "Hey, don't ban this," and we'll deliver it to the White House when we have enough signatures. We're hoping to get to like 50,000, but it's been a little bit slow. I know a lot of people are like scared right now because it's illegal now, and like people are like, "I don't want my signature on there. It's illegal." But we have to be brave and sign things. So save7oh.org. There's even a veterans group. So we have several veterans that are, helping provide a voice to those that are using 7.0 and really make a stand that we deserve to be able to treat ourselves with this plant medicine 7.0H. And so I believe it's save7oh.org/veterans, but you can sign up and be part of those activities or an actual active like working group
Mhm.
um, with that. And so that they're great. And then also, we'll be coming out with the results of our survey. Everything about what people are using, how people are using 7.0, who uses 7.0. And then we even have a subset of 115 veterans that took that survey, and we'll hopefully have the data from just the veterans to see, are they taking more, do they have, different withdrawal symptoms, or, are they basically using 7.0 just like everyone else? We want to make sure again, because it's like vulnerable groups, right? It's
Mhm.
like we want to protect people. We do not want our most vulnerable people being hurt in any way, right? And it's like we need to provide more education to them. We're happy to do it. But yes, save7oh.org/veterans, sevenhopealliance.org. I also wrote a book called Kratom is Medicine that came out in 2021. If you just want like a little primer on like what the heck is kratom, but if you send emails to our organization, we're happy to answer any questions. A lot of people don't understand what the doses are and things like that. It's like, what should I take? Should I start off with 100? Should I start off with 20? Like, there's a lot of questions out there. We'll be developing a lot of education. We have a school community right now. I think I threw you the link. It's like hard to say.
Mhm.
It's got the keywords in there, but we do have a community where people can talk privately, and also there's educational videos from some of the presentations we did at different conferences, and then we'll be having like actual like, hey, 70101 safety and things like that, or like what to do if you think you're addicted to 7.0, because again, we want to support people in any way possible.
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful, Dr. Ross. I mean, honestly, talking with you today and sharing a little bit about myself that I don't think our listeners really know, because this year has been such a dynamic experience, and trying to find solutions and work with great people that can actually, I want to say, influence a change, because effect and affect need to be the target of our outcomes and our
Mm-hmm.
investments, right? As a nation, I'm not saying we owe it to our veterans. What I'm saying is, regardless if we do or not, it's the moral thing to do. It's the right thing to do. if we have different emotions of each other, that's fine. Our politics can sway left to right, and that's something where we do have to remove, and I mean this passionately, this identity politics, where if you're on drugs, then you're a demon's spawn. I'm like, no, man. It's like I love how that's how we started today. Was you sharing that epic truth about how you were treated and how you're on this show with me, because I get the same shit, sister. And I tell you what, I have the same vibe. Nobody's going to shut us up. Nobody's going to shut us down because we're right. Okay. When you're doing the righteous thing, it doesn't matter what people say or do to you. You just have to do it. Like the old Nike saying, just do it. Right. So thank you for your time. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for sharing the connection there. 70h 7hope.org, the veterans aspects and everything like that. And is there any shout outs, anything you like to say before we leave today?
Um, let's see. I think we covered so much, but again, I just want to make sure everyone read your packages before you take your Kratom or your 7O. Make sure you know what you're taking, how much you're taking, and if it's safe for you to take it that day. Thanks.
The light gon' shine through the darkest night. A flicker grows into something bright. A fire, a fire. It burns inside. The light gon' shine, the love gon' come. The Lord is here. My heart's under a fire. A fire can't be denied. Storms may howl, the rain may fall, but I stand firm. I hear the call. A fire, a fire. It's burning.